April 1945, Berlin. Somewhere beneath a bombed-out apartment building, German workers huddle over a workbench. On the table sits a captured British Sten gun, the crude, pipe-like weapon that German propaganda had ridiculed for years. A plumber's nightmare, they had called it, a pipe pretending to be a firearm, beneath the standards of any serious army. Now they are copying it. Within weeks, thousands of these copies will roll out of workshops across the dying Reich. The weapon they had once mocked as primitive junk had become their last hope. To understand how German engineering pride collapsed into desperate imitation, you need to understand what Germany had lost by early 1945. The MP40 had represented everything German military doctrine valued: precision manufacturing, superior metallurgy, engineering built to last. Each weapon required specialized machinery, high-grade steel, and skilled labor. But by 1945, those factories were burning. Allied bombing had systematically destroyed German heavy industry. The precision machinery that made MP40 production possible lay buried under rubble. The skilled workers who operated those machines were either dead, conscripted into desperate last-stand units, or fleeing west ahead of Soviet forces. Germany faced a brutal reality. Its units were being equipped with rifles designed for static warfare, while fighting desperate urban battles that demanded automatic weapons. Every destroyed MP40 represented irreplaceable firepower that could not be replaced through normal production channels, because those channels no longer existed. Not just the factories themselves, the entire infrastructure that had made those factories function. The rail lines that brought raw materials in, the power grids that ran the machines, the supply networks that moved finished weapons to the front. All of it was collapsing simultaneously, under bombardment from above and advancing armies on every side. Germany in early 1945 was not a country with a damaged industrial base. It was a country whose industrial base had ceased to function as a system. The solution came from an unlikely source. German ordnance officers examining captured British Stens noticed something their own propaganda had concealed. Despite its crude appearance, the British weapon was mechanically sound, tactically effective, and simple enough to manufacture in any workshop with basic metalworking capability. British designers had optimized it for rapid production under wartime constraints. Stamped components replaced machined parts. Minimal welding substituted for precision fitting. The result looked crude because it was crude. Deliberately and effectively crude. German engineers, trained to value precision over everything, initially resisted copying something they considered inferior design. But desperate circumstances demanded desperate solutions. And so the MP3008 was born. It represented everything German military engineering had previously rejected: stamped steel construction instead of precision machining, simplified manufacturing processes instead of traditional craftsmanship, quantity production in dispersed workshops instead of centralized industrial facilities. But it worked, and by April 1945, working was more important than working perfectly. The reverse engineering process revealed uncomfortable truths about German manufacturing philosophy. British designers had solved production problems through elegant simplification, reducing complex assemblies to basic components that semi-skilled workers could fabricate using standard tools. German engineers discovered that the Sten's apparent crudeness concealed a sophisticated understanding of manufacturing constraints. The simple magazine housing provided reliable feeding despite minimal machining. The basic trigger group delivered consistent fire. It was not inferior engineering. It was a different kind of engineering, one built around what could actually be produced, not what ideally should be. Now, before we get into what happened when these weapons reached the men who needed them, if you're enjoying this channel, hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps the channel grow. Production of the MP3008 began in workshops that would have horrified any pre-war German quality inspector. Small machine shops, bicycle repair facilities, basement operations receiving blueprints, and fabricating components from whatever materials remained available. The dispersed production model meant that no two MP3008 weapons were identical. Workshop variations produced different stock configurations, different finishing quality, different details on almost every surface. Some retained the Sten side-mounted magazine, others moved it to the bottom for easier reloading while prone. High-grade steel went to critical components like barrels and firing pins. Everything else came from whatever remained in the stockpiles. Quality control became impossible under these conditions. German ordnance officers who had once rejected components for minor surface imperfections now accepted weapons with visible tool marks and rough finishes. The alternative was no weapons at all. Material substitution reached desperate levels. Springs sourced from vehicle suspensions, trigger guards fabricated from whatever steel was at hand. The irony was not lost on anyone paying attention. German propaganda had spent years mocking Allied industrial capacity as quantity over quality. Now German workers were implementing exactly that philosophy because it was the only one left. A small machine shop that might have required weeks to produce a single MP40 receiver could turn out a dozen MP3008s in the same period, using simplified processes and readily available materials. But this production shift came with real costs. The MP3008 suffered from reliability problems that precision German engineering had previously eliminated. Feeding malfunctions occurred. Firing pin breakage disabled weapons after limited use. The open bolt made accidental discharge a constant danger for men who had received almost no training. German units receiving these weapons developed field fixes. Trigger groups reinforced with scavenged materials. Magazine springs replaced from captured Allied weapons. Barrels swapped when accuracy degraded beyond what could be tolerated. Men who had never been armorers became armorers out of necessity. Nobody was pretending these were good weapons. They were weapons for men who had run out of options. The Volkssturm received most of them. The Volkssturm was Germany's last levy. Teenagers, men in their 60s, retired teachers, farmers, office workers who had never been called up. Civilians handed a uniform and told to defend what remained of the homeland against armies that had been fighting for years. Some arrived to find no weapons waiting. Some were given armbands instead of uniforms because there were none left. Some received ammunition for weapons they did not have. The men who did receive the MP3008 found its simple operation easier to master than anything more complex. Load, release, fire. That was all there was to learn. And in the ruins of Berlin in April 1945, in stairwells and basement corridors and gaps in rubble, that was sometimes enough. In close-quarters urban fighting, the MP3008 provided automatic firepower for units that would otherwise have been equipped with bolt-action rifles alone. Soviet assault troops, advancing through rubble-filled streets, faced sustained fire from positions they had expected to suppress quickly. A position with automatic weapons felt different to attack than a position without them, even when those weapons were crude copies built in basement workshops. Soviet forces encountering these weapons initially assumed they were captured British Stens. They could not understand why German forces were using Allied equipment. That confusion, entirely unintentional, briefly worked to Germany's advantage. Soldiers who had learned to respect German weapon quality occasionally hesitated when facing what appeared to be inferior British equipment. In a battle measured in hours and meters, hesitation mattered. But this was a footnote to a collapse, not a reversal of it. German forces also used the MP3008 in ways that reflected the increasingly unconventional nature of their situation. Some units rigged the weapon into improvised defensive traps, the simple firing mechanism triggered by tripwires. Workshop modifications became common as units gained experience. Stocks rebuilt from available materials, improvised slings from parachute cord or leather strapping. The bottom-mounted magazine proved its worth in practice, easier to handle when a man was lying prone in rubble, reloading under fire, than the Sten's side mount had ever been. Units that had initially received side magazine variants field converted them, where they could. Field commanders built their tactics around what the weapon could actually do. Crossroads, building entrances, narrow passages, anywhere the engagement distance was short and the defensive advantage was high. Anywhere a man with a crude submachine gun could hold a position that a man with only a bolt-action rifle could not. Production continued until the final collapse in May 1945. Somewhere between 10 and 28,000 were built, depending on which post-war accounts you believe. The dispersed production that had enabled rapid manufacturing also made precise accounting nearly impossible afterward. Most were destroyed in the final battles, abandoned during retreats, or collected by occupying forces. A significant number ended up in Czechoslovak hands after the war. They are rare today. Allied intelligence officers examining captured examples noted technical competence, despite crude appearance. German engineers had successfully adapted the Sten design for German tooling and German ammunition. The bottom magazine configuration was a genuine improvement over the original. American industrial analysts studying German wartime production methods identified the MP 3008 program as evidence of manufacturing flexibility under extreme constraints. The ability to shift from precision engineering to emergency production, to scatter that production across dozens of unconnected workshops, and to deliver functional weapons under those conditions impressed observers who had expected the German system to seize up entirely. It had not seized up. It had adapted. Just not fast enough, and not at sufficient scale to matter. The MP 3008 program left a specific lesson that military planners and industrial analysts noted in the years that followed. Dispersed production, scattering manufacturing across dozens of unconnected workshops, had proven more resilient to bombing than centralized facilities. A single factory could be destroyed in one raid. 30 workshops spread across a region could not. Several NATO nations studying German wartime production records incorporated that principle into their own Cold War emergency planning. The idea that critical weapon production should never be entirely concentrated in facilities that could be knocked out in a single strike traces part of its lineage back to what Germany improvised out of desperation in 1944 and 1945. The irony is complete. A program born from the failure of Germany's industrial model became a reference point for how industrial models should be built to survive. It marked the moment when German military industry acknowledged something it had refused to acknowledge for years: that precision, refinement, and craftsmanship were luxuries. That the weapon which could actually be built, actually be put into hands, and actually be fired mattered more than the weapon that existed as an ideal. German engineers who had spent careers perfecting manufacturing processes found themselves deliberately introducing imperfections to accelerate production. Quality control inspectors who had once rejected components for minor flaws now approved weapons that would have horrified their earlier selves. This philosophical reversal reflected broader changes in German society during those final months. Traditional institutions were collapsing. Established hierarchies were being abandoned. Survival had taken precedence over principle across almost every domain. The MP 3008 was the clearest expression of that shift in physical form. A weapon that said plainly and without apology that everything Germany had built its manufacturing identity around had become a liability when the conditions that made it possible were gone. The MP 3008 was Germany building quantity over quality, because quality had become impossible, and quantity was the only thing left. The MP 3008 represented more than desperate improvisation. It marked the moment when German military culture acknowledged that survival mattered more than the standards it had built its identity around. The weapon they built by copying their enemy's design became a monument to the collapse of those standards. The weapon German troops had called English sheet metal junk was, in the end, the weapon Germany tried hardest to copy when everything else had failed, and could not copy fast enough. That is the verdict on the MP 3008. Not a failure of engineering, A failure of time. Subscribe for more German weapons and tell us in the comments what other German weapon system would you like us to cover next.